A country without a language is a country without a soul. The Irish revolutionary Padraig Pearse wrote those words in 1916. When an occupying empire finally retreats, they rarely pack up everything. They leave behind drawn borders, bureaucratic institutions, and a functional gap. The administrative machinery required to run the country remains coded in the vanished administration's tongue. In June 1962, intellectuals gathered in Uganda for the African Writers' Conference to address this crisis. They needed to figure out how to write, speak, and govern following European imperialism. The choice of language dictates who can access the new government, who can participate in interregional trade, and which specific groups are prioritized in the construction of the new national identity. For the Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the answer was absolute rejection. He argued that the colonizer's language acts as an imperial curse, a tool designed to dominate the mental universe of the colonized. To decolonize the mind, the native tongue must be reinstated as primary. The Nigerian novelist Chinua Achebe took the opposing stance. He viewed the colonial language as an inherited resource. Achebe argued, since the language was forced upon them, the practical move was to commandeer it, alter it, and use it to their advantage. This debate frames a modern political reality. Post-colonial nations face three difficult paths: reviving a suppressed native tongue, adapting the occupier's language, or engineering an entirely new compromise. Take the first path, revival and rejection. In Ireland, centuries of British colonial rule relied on forced assimilation. Laws required Irish citizens to adopt English surnames, and school systems operated entirely in English, punishing those who spoke their native tongue. As the push for independence gained momentum in the early 20th century, speaking Irish became a symbol of nationalist defiance. Fluency signaled an overt rejection of British influence and a claim to a distinct, sovereign identity. Reclaiming a suppressed language often intertwines with the physical conflict required to achieve freedom. In Northern Ireland, Irish became deeply associated with militant republicanism. In the 1970s and 80s, imprisoned members of the Irish Republican Army transformed their cell blocks into language schools. They dubbed this system the Gaeltacht, a play on the Irish-speaking Gaeltacht regions. They used the language to communicate secretly, turning vocabulary itself into a tool of rebellion. This explicit militarization of the language had a severe side effect. By tying Irish so closely to figures like Bobby Sands, the language alienated Northern Ireland's unionist population, who viewed it as an indicator of political extremism rather than a shared cultural heritage. Reviving a native language successfully restores a cultural voice. Yet, when that language is weaponized to fight an occupier, it can fuel internal division long after the colonizer is gone. This is exactly why Chinua Achebe advocated for the second path, conquering the colonial language. Rather than fighting a linguistic war, a newly independent state can claim the occupier's words and bend them to fit its own culture. Sociologists refer to this process as Afropolitanism. This is the mechanism of taking an inherited, standardized European language and infusing it with local syntax, idioms, and cultural rhythms. The result is a global tool, simultaneously rooted in local identity and understood on the international stage. In nations with immense linguistic diversity, adopting this modified English allows citizens to bypass internal ethnic rivalries. It provides a neutral platform for government and commerce without elevating one specific native tribe's language over another. This strategy offers rapid global integration and domestic logistical ease. The cost is that the state must house the ghost of its former colonizer within its daily speech. The third option is the most structurally extreme, rejecting the colonial tongue but refusing to let a single indigenous language dominate. Nigeria is home to over 500 distinct languages, with Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo being the most prominent. To alleviate the political tensions caused by this fragmentation, some policymakers have proposed engineering a brand new unified national language, an artificial amalgamation of Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba into one cohesive system. This proposed solution merges distinct regional dialects into a single linguistic pipeline, theoretically streamlining government, trade, and education. But in practice, this hits massive structural walls. An artificial language requires immense resources and faces intense resistance from citizens fearing their ancestral identities will be erased. Engineering a unified language treats cultural identity like a sterile mathematical equation. It fails to account for the human fear of erasure. Syntax and grammar function as a proxy for historical trauma, cultural survival, and political power. Today, Ireland continues to wrestle with depoliticizing its native tongue to ensure it is seen as an inclusive heritage rather than a partisan stance. Meanwhile, countries across Africa push to balance the sheer economic utility of English with the preservation of indigenous diversity. Whether a newly independent nation reclaims a historical voice, adapts a colonial tool, or attempts to invent a new hybrid, there is no simple legislative fix to replace what an empire disrupted. A national language must be negotiated daily by its people, perpetually balancing the ghosts of their history with the practical realities of their future.